Searching for leaders to unite us to succeed, not divide us to fail. Take Polly Williams, for example. She spent her last days bringing people of all stripes together to fight for underprivileged kids, helping give parents the freedom to choose schools that would help their kids succeed, not the ones the government forced on them. So in the face of this Ferguson violence, do we need more leaders like Polly Williams today? Hi, everybody. I'm David Asman. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Let's go in focus with Steve Forbes, Rich Karlgaard, Sabrina Schaefer, along with John Tamny and Fox News contributor David Webb. David, you spent about a week and a half in Ferguson. You just arrived from Ferguson. Was there anybody there spreading a message like we heard from Polly Williams?
No, there wasn't, David, and that's a big problem. In August, I actually talked to some pastors who wanted to spread a similar message of peace, but when I asked them about education in the community, and education, as you know, leads to jobs, your ability to do the job, to get a job, they weren't talking much about that. Unfortunately, there wasn't a Polly Williams down there, and that is a tragic circumstance in that city right now.
But, Rich, I get the impression that the media focuses more on the dividers than on the uniters. I'm sure there are other Polly Williams in the country, although she was unique.
Well, that's the nature of our media world today. The more outrageous you are, the more, Twitter followers you have and things like that. Look, what Ferguson needs most is jobs, and I'm so glad that David mentioned that. And to have jobs, you need employers, and what do employers want? They want people who will show up to work on time, who can read and write, who have the capacity to learn. Now, the public school system in poor areas like Ferguson is failing to produce people like that, and so we need creative alternative solutions such as those brought by Polly Williams.
And, John, the creativity involved is so simple in a way. It's maybe difficult to achieve with the unions against it and so forth, but you just allow individual parents and students the dignity to make their own choices.
Well, I think anyone who is enhancing individual liberty should be cheered, and obviously Polly Williams is among those. But I also think politicians make a mistake when they say that education is the path to prosperity. The reality is that hard work is how we prosper, and teachers can't teach us how to work hard. They can't teach us how to be entrepreneurs or how to thrive in the workplace. And so I almost think that we set expectations incorrectly in saying that if you go to school, you're going to succeed. That's not necessarily true.
But, Steve, prosperity is one thing. Money is not the secret to the success of good education. We have spent billions of dollars. In fact, since 1980, the Department of Education, the Federal Department of Education, created in 1980, has spent $1.4 trillion. We haven't gotten the bang for that buck that we need.
No, David, it's not a matter of money, and numerous surveys show that here and around the world. The key thing is having schools that work, and that means accountability to parents, and that's what Polly Williams stood for. In this society, more than ever before, the real wealth of a society is the human mind, and kids at a young age have to learn to read, how to write, learn discipline, not to mention part-time jobs where they learn those basic things so they become valuable to employers, and so that's where the schools are failing. And she understood, give parents a choice, make the schools accountable, and by golly, you're going to see really rapid rises of people who start with very little in life.
Sabrina, unfortunately, right now in Missouri, the people who are more indoctrinating, interested in indoctrination more than education, are in the lead. One state senator suggesting that they now change the curriculum to include lessons on how to protest.
This is just it's so insidious. And of course, I mean, the people to blame here are the Democratic Party and the teachers' unions. They are the ones who are standing in the way in real educational freedom. The fact is that our government-run schools are literally some of the most insidious parts of our progressive government bloats. The reality is, as Steve has said, as Rich has said, and I actually disagree a lot with John here, is that we want to be able to give people equal opportunity to access. And that's something that we simply don't have. And if we want to really get at the root causes of poverty, we absolutely have to expand educational freedom options.
John, go ahead. It's tossed to you.
Well, if you show me kids who are interested and parents who care, I will show you a good school. No doubt teachers' unions deserve some blame, but I think far more blame should be focused on kids who show up to school unprepared and who don't care, and parents who don't make them to do that. Vouchers are great, but they will not solve that problem, I don't think.
David?
There's so much I could throw in here, so I'll just hit it in bullet points, David. Yes, you have to have options. You have to have choice. This isn't just about vouchers. On top of that, the kids need to have a family that's a family structure, whether it's a blended family, mother, father. Who was Michael Brown before he got into that incident? It wasn't black or white. That's the accident of his birth. But who was he before he got into that incident where he decided to fight with a cop? On the education front, there's a simple example. I saw it in Ferguson. One gentleman walked by my Camry position, big sign above his head. He spelled the word liar, L-I-E-R. A big sign. This was something he took the time to write out, but he actually couldn't write a simple word correctly. So all these are elements, and yes, they're ideas that we need to push forward, whether it's the money in the backpack attached to the kid. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. If you save 5%, 10%, next time you might save 12%. You do everything and you combine it and you localize it, which is where education is.
Rich, I see you nodding your head yes. Go ahead.
Well, I love the don't let perfect be the enemy of good is exactly, I think, the approach here. We're not going to get from Ferguson to some Ivy League college prep school level of public education overnight or maybe ever, but we have to have creative solutions. You know, John Tamny, with whom I agree 90% of the time, is wrong on this. And John, I think what you're expressing is your disappointment in the public school system in Ferguson. That does not impugn education. We need education. We need creative alternatives of the kind that Polly Williams brought.
Sabrina, I don't want to make too big a leap here, but there is a connection, is there not, between what went on in Ferguson and what Polly Williams said needs to be done to prevent what happened in Ferguson?
Absolutely. Look, as David said, as others have been saying, we have two things to deal with. We need to have actual family units that care and provide support for children, and then we also have to have opportunity for them to get education, and so that they can have an equal chance at life, right? So this is not rocket science. We just have bad policies in place in many instances. And one of the things is that we think that people are all going to be motivated to make changes based on sort of an ethical or moral argument.
Right.
The reality is we're not. You know what people are motivated by is costs. Saving taxpayer dollars. That's what gets people to support educational freedom.
And Steve,
that's what we should really be talking about.
Steve, the vouchers bring together families in support of their children in a way that public education generally doesn't. Public education, you send your kids away, the government takes care of it. With vouchers, the family is very much involved in what happens to the kid.
Yes, and it takes a handful of families, handful of mothers and dads to be an influence on other parents who say, gee, maybe we can do better. So it's not passivity. It brings about activity. You respond to the environment you're in. And kids, even if they come from a dysfunctional home, they go to a school where they're there most of the day, most of the summer. It's a refuge. They learn in spite of the background of the home front. So this is win-win all around, what Polly Williams understood.
So, David, it's not, to come full circle, it's not a big leap to talk about Polly Williams, what she was doing, and talk about what's happening in Ferguson.
It's absolutely not a big leap. Matter of fact, it's an important leap that we take. First of all, when you look at choice and the choice movement in America, vouchers, money in the backpack, other programs, they help the poor children. The people who are rich that have the money, they can afford the prep schools. And one other example, right by the Target parking lot where all the SAT trucks are, the satellite trucks, you go down Lucas and Hunt Drive Road, there is a beautiful prep school. Imagine if a kid in Ferguson had the money to take and go to that prep school because they had the background and they had the skill. What that would mean, that's one person who would have a bright future.
Well, it costs $12,000 per student, average in America, to educate a student. If you gave the parents that money, allowed them to take it to those prep schools, I'm sure the kids would be much better off. David, thank you. Your voice was still a little hoarse from Ferguson. We appreciate you making the effort to get here.
Tear gas.
Okay, that too.